So this book is called Make Me Giggle, Writing Your Own Silly Story. It's by Nancy Loewen, illustrated by Corey Durfeld. So looking at the cover, looks like it's a story about a cat. And this is a silly story. Feeling hungry? Well, today's special is a silly story Sunday. This yummy treat has 2 scoops of smiles and 1 scoop of tee-hee. It's smothered in whipped laughter and sprinkled with giggles. Silly stories make us laugh. They stretch our imaginations. They let us take a break from the serious things in our lives. Read the following story, The Problem Purr. Then go back to page 5 and start learning about the tools you need to write your own silly story. So I'll read the story, and as I go through, I'll talk about these tools that are on the side. Okay, first page. Fritter looked like an ordinary kitten. He had 2 pointed ears. He had a pink nose and even a little pinker tongue. He had whiskers, sharp little claws, and a long, curvy tail. But Fritter was not an ordinary kitten. When Fritter purred, mice scampered into their holes, dogs whined, frogs dove into deep water, and rabbits tied their ears into knots. Oh my! I wonder why. So tool 1, the beginning of a silly story should introduce one or more of the main characters. Remember, the characters are the people or the animals or the creatures in the story. Main characters are the ones who appear most often. Here we learn a lot about Fritter the kitten. Fritter is one of the story's main characters. Tool 2. The setting is the time and place which the story happens. We see from the illustrations here that the story takes place on a farm, and like many silly stories, it happens in its own time, set apart from real life. Fritter's purr sounded a bit like a lawnmower sputtering, a hippopotamus hiccuping, a goose honking. It reminded some folks of a squeaky barn door or the braying of a hopping mad donkey. Fritter's purr sounded something like this: put, hick, honk, squeak, hee-haw. And it was loud. Oh, yikes, this poor cat. Tool 3. Silly stories are filled with silliness. Silly characters, places, names, events, and sounds. Things that don't have to make sense, and they're not likely to happen in real life. For example, have you ever heard a real kitten make such a silly sound? Probably not. Tool number 4, imaginary can be a big part of a silly story. Writers use words to create a picture in the reader's minds. The words might compare one thing to another. Here, Fritter's purr is compared to a lawnmower, a hiccuping hippo, a goose, a squeaky barn door, and a mad donkey. His mother tried to train Fritter to purr properly. So there she is over here, trying to help poor Fritter. Breathe slowly and steady, she said. Think rumble, tumble, fumble, bumble as you picture dancing spots of light. That always works for me when my purr gets stuck. So Fritter closed his eyes. He breathed slowly and steadily. He thought, rumble, tumble, fumble, bumble. He pictured dancing spots of light. But out came hip, pock, hip, honk, squeak, eek, poor Fritter. And, before I forget, tool number 5, word sounds can make a silly story more fun. Rhyming words such as rumble, tumble, fumble, bumble create a pleasing sound. Repeating consonant sounds also get the reader's attention. In the first sentence on this page, for example, notice the many R's, T's, and P sounds. His father, too, tried to train Fritter to purr properly. Imagine there's a tiny motor inside you. Turn the key, shift the gear. Now slowly give your little motor the gas. Fritter closed his eyes and pictured everything his father had described. But instead, out came bit, but, bit, all sweet, hee-haw. Slam on the brakes, his father shouted. Oh man. Fritter's brothers and sisters tried something different. I've got your tail. Bet you can't catch me. I dare you to climb to the top of the light pole. I'll double dare you to go into the doghouse. They kept Fritter so busy that he didn't have time to purr. That was nice. They were trying to help him out in their own way too. Dialogue is tool number 6. That's what characters say to each other. Through dialogue, readers learn about the characters and get information about the story's events. Dialogue makes the readers feel that they're hearing a story, not just reading it. If Fritter did have a quiet, peaceful moment, the barnyard animals were quick to put gloomy thoughts into his head. Cold wind, said the horse. An empty food dish, said the dog. 3 straight days of rain, said the sheep. Thanksgiving, said the turkey. Oh no, he's worried. He's thinking he's going to be Thanksgiving. But Fritter was a cheerful kitten, and he could hold his purrs inside for only so long. At some point, he had to let it go. Put, pick on, squeak, hee-haw. Tool number 7, irony. Irony is a kind of humor. It's based on the opposite meanings of words or ideas. We would never expect anyone to try to make a friend unhappy. But in this silly story, it's understandable. And for most of us, Thanksgiving is a happy thought, but not for the turkey whose dinner. Fritter looks very down in the dumps. After one especially loud outburst, Madame Gallop stomped her foot. Fritter, you have got to do something about that purr, she said. The dog is nearly deaf. The chickens are cracking. The mice have all moved to the next county. If you can't manage that purr of yours, I'm afraid you'll need to find another place to live. Fritter's purr left him as quickly as it started. He didn't have the slightest bit of purr inside him now. Not even a single puff. Not even the tiniest squeak. He was looking very glum and gloomy, very sad. Exaggeration is tool number 8. Exaggeration is a great tool in writing silly stories. When writers exaggerate, they make things sound bigger or better or smaller or worse than they actually are. Ordinary things go over the top. In silly stories, it's okay to stretch the truth because you're just having fun with it and it's just something silly. It's not real. That night, Fritter hardly slept. He was too worried. He loved his home and didn't want to leave. There he is looking quite fretful and worried. Tool number 9. The things that happen in a story are the plot. The events are connected. The only thing leads to another. Each of Fritter's silly purrs had led us to the worrisome moment. He was still awake when old Mr. Freckles shuffled to the top of the barn. The rooster ruffled his graying feathers. He opened his beak. Cock-a-doodle-doo, he croaked. Cock-a-doodle-doo. But the barnyard stayed quiet. No one stirred. Mr. Freckles tried again. Took a deep breath. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Mr. Freckles blinked at him. "Why, Fritter," he said, "thank goodness you're here. I can't seem to muster up a proper cock-a-doodle-doo. I'm getting too old for this job." "Let me help," Fritter said. He gazed at the sliver of sun rising over the horizon. He looked at the lilacs, the light pole, the doghouse. He breathed in the fresh, dewy air. He simply allowed his happiness to grow inside him until out came the loudest, most shocking purr Fritter had ever purred. "Put, put, hick, honk, squeak, hee haw!" Sleepy animals stumbled into the yard. They all stared up at Fritter and Mr. Freckles. Fritter stopped purring and began to tremble. Is he in more trouble now? So tool number 10. Silly stories have a little bit of suspense. We aren't sure what's going to happen to Fritter now. We feel uncertain and worried, but a little excited too. And wait to see what's going to happen. What do you think? There's Fritter up at the top with Mr. Freckles. Madame Gallop huddled with Fritter's parents. They whispered and nodded. Then Madame Gallop called up to him. "Fritter, do you think you could save your purrs all day and night and then give us one big wake-up purr every morning?" Fritter could hardly believe his ears. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "I think I could." "Then that will be your new job. A predictable purr is something we can all learn to live with. Congratulations," Madame Gallop said. Tool number 11. The climax is part of the story that's the most important. Everything that happened earlier in the story leads to this big moment. "As for you, Mr. Freckles," Madame Gallop added with a bow, "the barnyard thanks you for your years of loyal service." Mr. Freckles' eyes grew big. "You mean I can retire?" "Absolutely," Madame Gallop said. "Woohoo!" Mr. Freckles cried. "Pack your bag, Mrs. Freckles. We're taking a trip to Florida." Fritter couldn't help purring some more, but no one minded. The animals were all making lots of noises themselves and cheering. Tool number 12, emotions. They play a part in all stories, even silly ones. We wouldn't feel nearly as happy for Fritter here if Mr. Freckles didn't want to retire. But since he's thrilled, we can enjoy the moment. Tool number 13, ending. The ending of a silly story ties up all the loose ends. The reader feels happy and satisfied. The end. So here's another great way to make a silly story. Thanks. See you later. Bye.